people look at, the US, for example, and they go, oh, let's talk about US society, and it's broken in these ways, and it's got these problems. And in France, they talk about it in France, and in Japan, they talk about it in Japan. And they think that that the problem is between men and women, and they think, oh, men and women don't get along, and they have these problems. But what people don't understand is that the cultures that exist now are the cultures that survived over time, over all of the other cultures that existed before. All right, so we've had like a cultural death match, you can say. And right now in human history, where we have a certain number of cultures, and the vast majority have been eliminated. And a culture is a group of men and women. And I read this originally in a book called What's Good About Men, How Cultures Flourish by Exploiting Men. And it's a very interesting book. And what he points out is that cultures are men and women working together, right? That's what society is. It's men and women working together. And one culture and one society competes against another culture and another society. And some of those cultures and societies, the way that the men and women work together works better than the way that it works in other places. And so those places are more successful. And so the reason the cultures are the way they are isn't because someone had some nefarious plan. It's because that is what has worked best so far. Now, that doesn't mean there's not room for evolution and that things can't get better. Of course they can. But you shouldn't think that the way things are is arbitrary. They're not arbitrary. They are that way because they've worked. And so, a lot of, when you're talking about women and children, it's like you need a stable situation to raise children in, to nurture children in. And so women tend to lean towards that direction more, whereas men tend to lean not so much in the direction of that. They're thinking more about acquiring more. And you need to, in a time before we had pensions and Social Security and health care and all this stuff, the only safety was having more stuff. Like that was the only way. People would die at 35 with 10 kids, just randomly from the flu or something, like 100 years ago or 200 years ago. And the only way that they would know their family would be okay is if they had massive amounts of money. So they tried to get massive amounts of money by hook or by crook. It's not, that people were evil back then. It was just the necessities of the time. And, those necessities may have changed, but it takes time for people and society to change too. Thanks for joining us. If you got questions or comments, you can leave them. Please like and subscribe. And don't be a dick. I don't like dicks.